Hi, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome to Unapologetically Females.
We wanted to create a fun, non-judgmental space where women can talk about their shared experiences.
Here we will normalize the challenges we face as females living in a society that dictates unrealistic and outdated expectations on what a woman should be.
Together, we hope to cultivate a supportive community of women who empower one another to courageously live unapologetically.
A quick disclaimer before we get started. Although Cindy and Danielle are licensed therapists, this podcast is not to be interpreted as therapy or a replacement of therapeutic services. It is strictly a conversation between two women about their experiences in the world. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to like and subscribe below. Also, follow us on all of our social media platforms at Unapologetically Females. With that being said, we hope you enjoy this episode.
We are back.
We're back.
Another episode. So we're recording on a Saturday, and we released our first episode finally 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks. It hasn't even been a full 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have been so grateful for the feedback and the response and just people listening.
Right. We had more than one listener, so thank you for that.
Yeah. So that's exciting. Gives us a little motivation to keep going forward.
It does. It also speaks to our topic today.
It does. Yeah, exactly. So today we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. And
I think that you should read the definition because when you brought this up, I love that you brought it up. And actually, I didn't realize how much I experience it in my life.
Yeah, I mean, just with this podcast.
100%. So I think you should read the definition so that we're all on the same page.
Okay. So my official research on the Googler.
The Googler.
It is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. There's other touch points that I think are important to know about what the Googler says as far as imposter syndrome. So those who have it may doubt their skills, talents, or accomplishments. And I think for me, that kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
Well,
agreed. So when you brought up this topic, I was like, I'm going to have to research this. So I just put in imposter syndrome into Apple podcasts, and up came Jay Shetty, which love Jay Shetty. Shout out. And he did a full episode on imposter syndrome. And what really stood out to me from that was he said imposter syndrome is actually an opportunity or ourselves saying, I'd like to learn more, a challenge to ourselves of I'd like to become better at something. I'd like to learn more about something, right? And he said if we don't have that challenge to ourselves, then we're going to stay stagnant and then we're going to get bored. And that spoke to me so much in my life, right? Because I'm like constantly reading things and we're constantly trying to start new businesses and new ideas and all of these things to challenge ourselves. And then once we challenge ourselves, then it's like that self-doubt of, oh, but am I good at this? Or do I know how to do this? That type of things.
Right.
Yeah. So am I selling my real self?
I like that perspective of it, though, because, it sounds good.
Well, it's positive, right? It's a positive take on, yeah.
I think, so right now, I'm in a big transition. So where I've been working for the last 10 years, I am transitioning on from and will be starting a new role at a new company that is completely different than what I'm doing right now. And I'll be starting in like a week over there. And I am confident in the value that I bring because I know my own work ethic. Like I know that I'm a hard worker. I know that if I don't know the answer, I'm going to go learn it. I'm going to go find it. Like I know what I am capable of. And still I'm like, and what if I'm not good enough? And what if, what if I'm way in over my head or, just all of those things of like I have been successful where I'm at and have been able to, work my way up and do all those things. And I have definitely grown a lot there over those 10 years. But, does it translate somewhere else? Does it, am I just as valuable to another company? All of those things, even though I know like I have worked hard, and I know my skill set and, but yeah, those self-doubt thoughts have definitely been creeping in, as I'm in this major transition. And let's be real, 10 years, like it's been comfortable. Like it's consistent.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because change is hard.
Yeah.
And I talk to people all the time about change in my clinical practice of change is uncomfortable. It's hard, whether it's for a positive reason or it's forced on us, throughout life for different scenarios. And with that change comes doubt, right? But if we don't push to change, then again, we're going to stay in the same place and there's no forward movement. So if we don't try, it's that old adage, like if we don't try, we'll never know. And so with that comes doubt.
Right. It's funny because the whole change is hard statement is something that I have been saying a lot to my coworkers at where I'm currently at, because they've been so kind to me and have said some very, very like nice things. And that's something I have, said back to them, change is hard, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I acknowledge that I do think that, what they're experiencing is also a version of imposter syndrome of like, I can't make that decision without you, or I can't. And I do believe that I need to get out of the way, because I think that people will grow and their confidence will increase and all of that. So I'm like, I think that by me just removing myself and getting out of the way of their own self-doubt, and they, it'll force them to have to, to believe in themselves and make the decision, because I know they all have it in them,
Yes.
And so,
but it's uncomfortable for them to think that you're not going to be there to rely on in that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which also brings me to the thought of parenting, right? Like I have a lifelong therapist who I truly admire, who always reminds me that sometimes we have to let our kids fail in order to learn. And we can't always do everything for them because they'll never learn how to do it for themselves. And that's true in the workplace too, right? Like we can't do everything for everyone else because at some point we may leave and then they don't know how to do it. Same with kids, right? Like we can't do everything for them raising them, because once they go off to college or off to a career or off to wherever they choose to go, they're not going to know how to best do it for themselves.
Right.
And so the way that plays into imposter syndrome in a different way is, am I capable of doing it on my own because I've never had to do it on my own?
Right. Yes, like that is such a the whole parenting thing and what is doing too much or not enough, or where is that balance? I even think as a parent, like being the parent of, you see all these other parents and it's like, gosh, how are they so good at it? And then you compare yourself and you're like, how do they have so much patience? I mean, and again, like I'm not in their home, but the looks of it, it's like, oh man, like am I? And
then we do that comparison thing. Like I must not be as good as them, and then am I, in a role that I brought on myself and chose to be in, but am I doing a good enough job?
Right.
Man, I ask myself that every day being a parent. Am I doing a good enough job? But I also think that imposter syndrome is partly, and Jay Shetty may have said this in a different way, so please forgive me if you're listening. Like you're listening.
totally listening.
Yeah.
If you're listening, go ahead and repost us on any of your socials. Shout out.
What I was going
Thank
to
you.
say is forgive me for, not saying it in as eloquently as he says it, but is it roles that we take on because we feel that we should, that society expects us to take on? And when I think of that, I think of like being, for instance, I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom for a long time, and then I think of that term trad wife, right? Like traditional wife, but it's like a thing now, like trad wife.
That's what people say.
That's what
I
they're
am
saying.
so out of touch with
Well, I rely
current
on
language.
the younger people in my practice to fill me in on these things, but yeah, trad wife is like kind of a thing. Is that true? Georgia says yes. See, look to Georgia.
Yes. Trad
Yeah.
wife. What happened to saying the full word? Just curious.
Like, I mean, LOL and,
But
everything's like
LOL
condensed.
is laugh out loud. Funny story. I knew someone that thought LOL meant lots of love. And so they would send LOL for so many things. And it kind of worked,
but kind of didn't. Yeah. I could see myself interpreting it that way for sure. Yeah.
But trad wife.
So trad wife is like the idea of I want to become a traditional wife, right? Which is totally what I did. I absolutely did that in my 20s. I thought, okay, this is what's expected of me. I want to live the traditional life. I want to find a husband, support him in his career, raise children, do all the things. And don't get me wrong, I was very blessed to live that life, and I would never change that. And in the process, I lost my own identity. Mm-hmm. I lost who I was because I was living so much for this role of what I was supposed to be fulfilling. And then I got bored, to be 100% honest, because I wasn't challenging myself. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do to further my curiosities and my, things in life that I wanted to be fulfilling. I was living my life for everyone else.
Yeah.
And
it's a good point.
But then that also created imposter syndrome for me when I put myself out there. Like, am I capable of this? Can I do this? Am I smart enough to go back to school? Am I strong enough to start a new career? All the things, because that wasn't what I had been told or what I had lived.
Interesting. I mean, I didn't even, first of all, I didn't know about trad wife. But yeah, I could see how that being in that role, in the traditional wife role,
the trad role, yeah.
For so many years, all the decisions that you made later in life to your career and then what you were going back to school for, and that I just think that the profession that we have chose, the first day, that first client, your first session, it hits you because school is great and internships great, practicum, whatever it is that your school does, fantastic, but it is not the same. Yeah. And when you are sitting there and you're like, oh shit, they're looking at me for the answer,
and you're like, wait. Like, you want to hear what I have to say?
Yeah. Are you sure? Like, you want to pay for this? And you don't, I say you don't know what you're doing, but I mean, you can't predict some of the shit you're going to hear and how to respond to it.
Right.
And that you're going to be that person for that person that day.
Right. And we also need to be really cognizant of the fact that I'm not for everyone.
Right.
Like, it's okay if you don't like my approach or the way that, or what, I'm
Well, because like you're sitting there, you're like, okay, what modality am I going to use? Okay, am I going to do CBT, DBT, psychoeducation, like blah, 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 blah. And it goes on and on. And okay, so I got to make sure it's the right modality for the right person. And am I going to okay, hold on. Now I got to how am I going to document this? Okay, now I'm going to document.
But that's 100% imposter syndrome too, in that you're doubting yourself. and who you are or what you've learned, and how do I bring that all together, and am I good enough for this person?
Right.
Am I good enough? Am I giving them what, they need?
Am I making a difference?
Am I making a difference? Yeah.
Are they getting their money's worth? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, all the
for real.
things.
Yeah. Somebody just said yesterday, we were at a work thing, and somebody said, one of the greatest things about our profession is you can never be too old because life experience only increases your value. And there is a lot to say about life experience in the counseling field of, because I'm a mom and because I've raised a family and because of where I am, if I have a client who comes in who's a mom also, I can contribute in that way. I bring value to that rapport because we've both experienced a similar situation, right? Same goes for, a traditional wife or something like that. I can bring value to that conversation, or I can be more empathetic to that client for some of the different things that I've done in life, or the roles that I played in life. That doesn't make me more confident necessarily about the outcome of that session, but it does make me feel like I can at least offer relational empathy.
Yeah. And research shows that the whole, like, your modality has like such a small part in the outcome, right? And so it is about relationship. It's about the rapport and whether or not you connect on, that level with your client. Are you a good fit? Am I a good fit, for you?
Right.
And so it's interesting because it's like, I just have to be present for you and be able to show empathy and listen and be present.
Yeah, listen.
And that is most of the work, you know?
Right. Well, it's that mutual human energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The connection. So, and I think people a lot of time, when I've participated in therapy for many years, myself, and I've had great therapists and I've had not so great therapists, or not so great experiences. Maybe they just weren't the right one for me. No, I'll go out and say I did have a not good therapist at one point in time, and it was like, whoa, this is interesting. Just the things, and I'm sure that their own experience too as a therapist. Like, when I know more about your life than you know about mine,
right. Self-disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah. That was more like you were therapizing them.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
And therapizing is a word. Look it up. It's not a word. Sorry. But I use it a lot.
You put a T in yours. I leave out the therapizing.
Oh. I put a lot of other letters in there, but therapizing. Yeah. Anyway, I digress.
I want to put like a vote. Is it therapizing or therapizing?
Is it even a word? I don't know.
I don't care.
I think my kids probably made it up. Like, Mom, stop therapizing me. Be a mom, not a therapist. I'm like, I get that. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of times too, like, we can all look at moments of firsts in our life. And I think for me, there are probably moments of all of those firsts where I have experienced some level of self-doubt / imposter syndrome. It's not, right now it's so prevalent because of all the transition that's happening.
Right.
I'm trying to leave really well where I have been at for 10 years and start this new role. And so obviously, because it's in my face right now, I'm constantly, just thinking about that. What does this next chapter look like, and having, thoughts of self-doubt. But I also think about, becoming a parent, or I remember being pregnant and with my daughter, and it was like I had all the things in my head of like the kind
How
of
it should be.
Yes.
Yeah, the shoulds.
All of the
Stop shooting on yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And my daughter was a hard baby. she was just colicky. And so it was like all the things that should have happened, or I
Right.
said,
They didn't turn out as
they-
beautifully as you had imagined.
And so it was, that was hard because I was like, I thought it would be a breeze, I've been around kids my whole life. I was with my niece and nephew, when they were babies, and then to have a daughter who was puking all the time. She had like so much. She was such
Just couldn't make her happy.
It was so hard. She was so uncomfortable, and it was like, oh my gosh, maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Like this is
so self-doubt.
Yes.
Right? Self-doubt creeps in.
Yeah. And so and then I think of all of the first going back to school, deciding to go back to school. And it was like, can I do this? Can I actually grind? Because it's like, it is, I was working and going to school, and it was like, not only can I do this, but can I do it well? And when I had graduated high school, I was so dumb and was, like, I'm not going to go to college right away, which was just, I look back and it was a silly choice, but it was, I wasn't ready.
But, and college isn't for everyone.
Right.
It's not. It's just not for everyone. It's not the e-ticket to success for everyone.
And I will say, like, I definitely didn't know then what I wanted to do. And so I would go and take some classes and then not take classes. And then it was just, and it was, it was a waste sometimes of money and time. But then, then I stopped going, and then I just worked for a few years. And then I had decided at a certain point what I wanted to do. And I was able to, I went back to school, but I was definitely terrified of like, what if I can't pass a math class? I haven't taken math in so long. What if I can't write a paper anymore, or I'm not good? And then I made the decision to go straight into my master's program. And so I graduated on a Thursday, and I want to say on a Monday I started my master's program. Like, it was immediate.
No rest for the weary.
And and I went into like an accelerated program. And so my master's program was 12 months straight, and so it was, again, like, can I do this? And that self-doubt, I did it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I think there's, if I were talking to a client, it's, telling that client, tell me about the times you have done it, or you have been successful.
Right.
And it's like,
to remind them that you're capable.
All the times that I have, I was afraid going into something. But I can look back on my life and go, but I did it. I did, but I still have self-doubt.
Right. Right.
I still, it still creeps in, and I still, sometimes wonder if am I good enough?
Right. That brings in the thought of fear, which I think plays such a huge role, not just in imposter syndrome, but in our life in general. And it can sometimes paralyze us. Fear can. And it can also, there's a great quote, fear is the thief of joy. It's like, don't quote me, but maybe Teddy Roosevelt or somebody famous said that. The Googler will know. But it's so true, because we create this fear either from core beliefs and things that we truly have grown to believe about ourselves, or from, the idea of, I'm not going to be good enough, or I'm not going to fulfill it in a way that somebody else can, it being a role or something that we're striving towards. And I also like the acronym, or the saying of, fear could stand for face everything and rise, right? Like, if you face it at some level, you're going to further yourself. You're going to rise in some way, whether it be, okay, I really sucked at that, but I learned a lot from it, right? So I still rose from the situation because I learned from it. Or I wasn't going to try that, but dang it, I was really good at it, and I'm glad that I tried it. So I think that fear oftentimes makes us want to not try something. And if we let it paralyze us and not try something, then it's in control.
Right.
You know, I think that imposter syndrome embellishes so many different things that I didn't even think about till we started talking about it today.
Right. And you were just talking about like the fear and the perspective on successes versus failures and all the things. And I think that where we do live in a society where success is shoved down your throat, and it's almost like a measurement tool, you
Okay,
know.
so Jay Shetty said that too.
Really? I didn't even listen to the podcast.
but-
I will, though, if you want to also listen to ours.
Yeah. No, but and again, I'm not saying it exactly how he did, but our society definitely rates success by how much money we make or
Yeah.
how successful we are in the eyes of other people. And so that's kind of the goals that we're striving towards for ourselves, yet are we really fulfilling ourselves or are we fulfilling the expectations of others?
Right. And like even how hard and for how long you work, and if you don't work, 7 days a week or 10-hour days or
Right.
12-hour days or whatever it may be. I actually just met with somebody this week, and he said a statement of like, I work 18 hours a day. That statement or comment stuck with me. Because he also had shared he had, he has kids and a family and blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know if it was an over exaggeration.
Right.
It may have been, but it was something that stuck out because the need to say it, he felt the need to say it.
Right. Right.
And I thought that was, I just went, interesting.
Very telling.
Yeah, it was just telling. And but this whole, again, like success being a measurement, and if you don't work as hard or as long or as much or don't make as this amount or whatever it may be, or you haven't climbed to this level, it's at your job, or you don't have this title or whatever. It's all a measurement. And it's like, I think that it's so unfair because we all operate different.
Right.
And just because my success or your success doesn't look the same doesn't mean one is greater or less than the other.
Right. Right. And it doesn't have to be a traditional expectation, right? We don't have to live it out in a traditional way in order for it to be a success.
Trad life.
And I have to backtrack because I said fear is the thief of joy. That's not the quote. The quote is comparison is the thief of joy.
That's okay.
Right. Does that make more sense? Yeah. Sorry. I tried to fit it into what I was thinking, but
comparison is, I've heard that.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And when you were speaking to, the 18 hours, I work 18 hours a day, or, how we measure success, I think comparison plays a big role in that of, oh, you work 18 hours a day? Well, I work 19 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Or
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Comparison is like, it's the shoulds again.
Right.
It's like, well, they're doing this, so I should do this. And that comes from comparing yourself to others, or comparing yourself to how others go about doing things, or comparing yourself to, oftentimes that happens with siblings a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's like a natural, innate thing of, well, my sister or brother is this way, and so I should be this way, or I should do it better. Sometimes there's some competition there.
And jealousy.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is on such a small scale, but like even for my kids who are young, the comparison has been, one's a boy, one's a girl. They're 5 years apart. They're very different.
Right.
And the comparison and the jealousy, like we just had my son's birthday a couple weeks ago. He turned 3, and my daughter was absolutely keeping track of how
many presents you got
and the attention and
yeah.
And it was like that comparison definitely stole her joy for a couple days.
Right.
She was not having it.
Right. Well, it's hard to let them have their day when you are young and you want it to be your day.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no, but I think that thinking about that and the world that we live in that is constantly comparing, and we're looking at, well, we've talked about this in other episodes, but social media and that consumption, and so how that ties into we're constantly comparing and looking at everybody else's just a snapshot of their life, and then forming our own decisions or feeling a certain way and internalizing like I'm not successful enough or I'm not good enough, and it feeds that imposter syndrome, that negative thought cycle in our head. And it's like, just, I think so important to take a step back and be present to break those thought cycles and to acknowledge the times in our life that we have considered to be a success for ourselves, not what somebody else.
Right. Answer to ourselves, not to others. Yeah. And that reminds me brings me back to, there's definitely imposter syndrome, as you said in the beginning, with starting this podcast, right?
Yeah.
And comparison too. Like, is it going to be good enough? Are people going to want to listen? Or is it going to help people? Is it going to be interesting enough, right? If it's interesting enough and helps one person, then it's served its purpose. Why do we have to, in all things, put a scale on everything of good enough, best? Why can't it just contribute to all of the other podcasts that are out there and maybe touch on something new that somebody might want to or need to hear?
Yeah. I think that was well summed up. So we hope you enjoy, and we hope that this connects with someone, and maybe you feel a little less alone.
Little less alone and a little more empowered in your capabilities.
Yeah. Well, until next time, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Cindy. Thanks for listening.